Hello.
Hey, Gil, it's D. Simon and Harrison here from Sick and Wrong. How's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for being on the show, man. Um,
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Gil, you mentioned you're working from 9 to 5. What do you do for work these days?
I work at a construction company, office type stuff. The president of the company knew me from before the criminal case happened. So when I was, everything wrapped up and I was exonerated, I needed a job, and he really helped me out, helped me get back into the swing of things. Yeah, it's like just a, um, you know, sitting at a desk. Yeah.
That works. Yeah, that's what I was wondering if you were, still working for the NYPD, or if can you be employed as a cop in another state?
You know what? My record's completely clean, so theoretically, I should be able to. If I'm not, it would be discrimination, I suppose. But realistically, I don't think it would work, just because of my background and someone's gonna call 911 and have the cannibal cop show up at the door. I just don't. I just think it's kind of
Yeah,
that ship has
probably not gonna work
sailed,
out.
and I'm sort of at peace with it. I know my family's thrilled that I'm not a police officer anymore, especially in New York City. But
So you still live in New York. Have you been able to shake that reputation or the nickname Cannibal Cop?
not so much. It's never gonna leave me, and I've chosen to write books now. I'm writing horror novels, so with that stigma is gonna kind of stick with me, and that's my choice. I just kind of don't think it's ever gonna go away, so I have to make the most out of a really horrible situation.
When you get a
One,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
When you get a name like that, do you automatically get an honorary membership in like Batman's Rogues Gallery or something? Like, how does that work exactly?
Yeah, a lot of people know me as that, not so much as the regular guy who had a normal American upbringing, baseball player, straight A student, dean's list in college. So I get requests for, some interesting things, a couple of like dating games on a couple of podcasts. It's just kind of, it's funny, I always appreciate people willing to joke around. I'd rather have people joke around and make fun of me than be afraid of me. And it seems like, for the most part, that's the case. There are still people, and I completely understand it, who want nothing to do with me or are afraid of me. They think I would, hurt somebody.
Is the cannibalism fetish different than vor? Like, what is the difference?
I'm not really sure, to be honest.
All right.
I think vor is more like cartoony kind of stuff. But, yeah, I mean, they're under the same sort of thing.
Seem like they're in the same genre of fetish.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
what about? So you mentioned with dating site, is it difficult to date? I mean, do you like usually tell the girls right up front, like, oh, hey, by the way, I have this nickname you might hear, Cannibal Cop, or like, how does that come up?
That's been sort of interesting. With a few years of experience under my belt now, I kind of decided, to really only deal with women who know the entire situation right off the bat. So I'm active on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and I've had women message me. So I think that works better. Like, I think the days of meeting women at the bar for me are over, just because I don't know when I would possibly, when is the best time to tell somebody about this stuff. And nobody ever really gave me a straight answer. Some people said you should be right up front with it. Other people said wait till the third or fourth date. So I've had enough sort of volume where I can just have women contact me who are okay with everything and are comfortable around me and who are into their own real freaky kind of stuff. So it's gone better than I thought, to be honest.
Do you have groupies? Do you have girls that like seek you out specifically because you were the Cannibal Cop?
It kind of starts off with women who just sort of just get the whole thing. They have their own things they're into, and they understand the whole fetish thing, and that some people are into things that other people find repulsive. So it kind of starts off that way. Not everyone is just sort of looking to hook up, but there are a few
You're curious,
like
probably.
that. Yeah, exactly.
What about hate mail? Do you get a lot of hate mail, like people emailing you and telling you to saying horrible things?
Rarely, maybe out of every 20 messages I get, maybe one is someone telling me I should drop dead. But it's
Hey, you're better than us.
whatever. Listen, these people who wish me dead and wish someone would come pull a bullet, put a bullet in my head, things like that. Like, they can't grasp the irony. The fact that my criminal case played out the way that it did, they're allowed to say stuff like that without any legal ramifications. So,
Yeah, exactly. It is ironic.
I will say, as far as dating goes, I think since this case came out, the courtship process on FetLife is just a little bit longer than it is in a Jane Austen novel.
Yeah.
People are more cautious now, so that you do have that to answer for there, Gil.
Yeah, they might be more open-minded.
People should, people need to be careful. People need to be safe about whatever they're into. And, I talk about this in my book, but conspiracy laws are there for a reason. You want to stop a violent crime before it happens, but at what point does a thought cross the line become a crime? And in my case, with the evidence that ended up coming out, there was no real-world evidence, so it really was more of a thought crime than a conspiracy. But it is an important question, like, when should law enforcement step in and get involved? And that's really the single critical question about this case and why it's so important. And
as someone who had like a college degree and obviously went to the police academy, you have like more knowledge of the law than most. Like, did you give that? How much thought did you give it when you were writing your fantasies on Dark Fetish?
Legal trouble never entered my mind because I wasn't committing a crime. Everything was purely fictional and fantasy. These events, quote unquote, were supposed to take place in a mountain house in the middle of nowhere. There was human-sized ovens and just all these really ridiculous, fantastical elements to these role plays and stories that I just never envisioned law enforcement considering that this was a real thing. Now, these fantasies centered around women that I knew in my life, that is not atypical. When people have sexual fantasies, most of the time they incorporate people they know from their own lives into those fantasies. They don't just whip up someone in their imagination. You fantasize about a neighbor, a coworker, your boss, or whomever. So although my fantasies are atypical and certainly taboo and different, the fact that I incorporated women from my life, that's sort of, not unusual.
How do you safely realize those fantasies?
Just it never crosses the line into reality. And since all of
never?
this...
I mean, like, I'm not saying never. Obviously you eat people, but like play acting, whatever.
Yeah, like role playing.
Yeah, I've had opportunities since then. Now with some of the women who reached out to me who are into the whole thing, right? So I'm, the whole thing is BDSM, right? So I'm the D, I'm the dominant. There are women who are submissive. So we talk about what are hard lines, and so we do it safely. We do it completely consensual. So
what kind of reduction sauce do you use to marinate a woman in? Like what? Like what?
Oh man.
So Gil,
yeah.
One of the things, so you mentioned that you never actually took any actual steps to realize these fantasies, accomplish these fantasies. However, you were charged with the unauthorized use of NYPD computers to get information on possible victims. Would that be considered a step?
No, it wasn't a step at all. And, that's one of the crazy things about this case with a narrative that just isn't accurate out there. They charged me with using the police database one time. That's it. It wasn't 100. It wasn't. There's this whole narrative out there that I was using the patrol car computer, putting women's names in, taking their addresses. That never happened. There was one instance in 2012 where a woman I went to high school with had been she was in a car accident, and she had asked me, and instead of calling her police precinct for the report number, she called me and said, "Hey, is there any way you can get this report number for me?" I said, "Yeah, no problem." I typed her name into the computer, which I wasn't supposed to do. I mean, that's against NYPD policy, but the penalty for that's a couple vacation days. It's not a federal crime.
Yeah.
So, and cops do favors like that for people every day, every single day. I didn't do anything nefarious with that. I already knew where she lived anyway. I didn't need the computer to look her up. So that's just something that never really got cleared up, and it's frustrating to continue to have to answer that question and deal with that. And the charge was removed. I was found not guilty of that as well. So
that's the thing. You never actually set any dates to actually abduct a woman. You never bought any of this equipment that you wrote about. So
exactly.
That's why I don't understand how they could convict you. I mean, I guess I could see how prosecutors can convince a jury, but I mean, if I was on that jury, there's no way I would be like, well, I'm going to convict this guy for life in prison when you actually didn't commit any crimes. You just wrote. It's like convicting Stephen King.
Yeah, well, it turned out the jury convicted me, and a couple of the jurors did say this, that they convicted me because they were afraid of what I might do in the future, not based on anything that was presented. And as you know, as I'm sure your audience knows, that's not how the criminal justice system works, right? A defendant's charged with a crime, you convict or exonerate based on what happened already in the past, not on what someone might do in the future.
Exactly. It's not like you're not charging somebody for a thought crime. It's like Minority Report here. So, Gil, tell me how it all happened. You were in 2012. You were married with your child, newly married to your wife, and she was growing suspicious of your online behavior. Had you been having an affair or anything, or were you like finally actually indulging this fetish and like, reaching out to like BDS communities? Like, why was she suspicious?
Well, the entire story's in the book. We don't have a lot of time. We really need a couple hours to get into all of it. But, she had thought that I was having an affair. What happened was I worked nights. I worked from 4 p.m. to midnight. I got home after 1 a.m. And, as a cop in Harlem, you don't just go right to sleep. You're still sort of wound up. So some nights I put the TV on, I watch a movie, I had a PlayStation, whatever, Netflix, and other nights I would look at my pornography stuff and engage in those fetish role plays, fetish chats, and I was up till 3, 4 in the morning, and she was suspicious. She thought I was maybe having an affair, so she installed spyware onto the computer, and then she found what I was looking at, and freaked out.
She freaked out. Yeah. So I was wondering, she freaked out. And did she ask you about it before calling the FBI, or how'd that work?
We talked about it. That's another sort of false narrative out there, is that she found the stuff and picked the baby up and ran out of the house with nothing but the clothes on her back. That's not at all how it played out. She was there that morning and afternoon for 5 or 6 hours. She was packing up her stuff here. She said, "Listen, this is really freaking me out. I just need to get away for a little while." And her first reaction, and this whole the entire text message exchange between us is in the book. Never came out during trial because she didn't agree to have those messages, put forth in court, because we're a married couple, right? So that's like privileged stuff. I wish it did, because it paints a totally different picture of how it happened. Her first reaction was to, and this is a text message, while I'm gone, try to find a couples therapist. We'll work this out. We'll make it true. It'll be okay. So.
And in the media, you read it, it's like she went straight to the FBI. Next thing you know, it's like you're in prison.
Yeah, that's not at all how it played out. Now, when she was home out in Nevada, somebody out there convinced her to go to the FBI, and once that happened, there was no turning back. They convinced her that she was seconds away from being murdered, and that was it. Like, she was not interested in anything else, any other potential explanation for any of this stuff. It was all right. They said I was going to be murdered. I was going to be murdered.
Yeah.
And that's it. I haven't spoken to her since. I haven't seen my daughter since. It's just a total, complete tragedy and nightmare.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry to hear about that. So do you think the reaction would have been as severe if you were not a cop? Like, if you were just a regular dude into BDSM, but not a cop, do you think the reaction would have been as severe?
Probably not. I've talked about this with some people, including my lawyers, and they thought if I was just, if I was doing what I'm doing now, right, working a 9-to-5 job in an office, right, so completely harmless, probably not. But I had a gun and handcuffs, and that played into their decision to arrest me. Plus the whole idea of like a New York City police officer with these fantasies about kidnapping and cooking women.
Plays into the narrative, yeah.
Just
definitely.
such a huge story. You guys know about it all the way out there in California, and it was national news for sure, and I completely understood that. But if I was just a regular, a plumber or something like that,
yeah, maybe it wouldn't have been
not
as big of a deal.
You made a lot of money for the New York Post. That's
yeah. What was the reaction of your coworkers? So I imagine you were immediately fired from the NYPD, but like, what about your friends and family, I guess?
Well, my family stuck with me from the beginning. They never believed any of it. One thing when a person goes through this kind of situation, you really get to know who your true friends and family are. And I didn't hear a peep from my former coworkers at the police department, not one word.
No.
Nor did my family until I got out of prison. Once I was completely exonerated, people came out of the woodworks. Gil, we knew from day one it was BS. We knew you were innocent. I'll take that stuff with a grain of salt. I appreciate it, but if you knew it from day one, how could you leave my family out there in the dark? My father went to the place where I worked, the precinct where I worked, the day I was arrested, and they threw him out. So if you knew from the first moment that it was just a nonsense case, how could you treat my father that way?
Exactly. So how long were you in prison before the conviction was overturned?
21 months total.
Wow, it's almost 2 years. And some of that was spent in solitary, I read as well.
Was that at Rikers?
No, this was a federal case. It was in a federal
was it at that one in Brooklyn? That federal place?
No, Lower Manhattan. Not where El Chapo just got sentenced.
Okay. I used to live right near that prison there. Federal,
Were you more of a target being a former cop or being a dude with a weird fetish?
Nobody ever got into my face over there, and that's one of the safety concerns, which is why I was in solitary confinement for 7 months. They were concerned for my safety, and I was concerned for my safety, but it got to a certain point where I just couldn't deal with it anymore, so they put, I asked, just give me a shot in general population. Let's see how it goes. If I feel threatened, if someone gets in my face, then, put me back in solitary, fine. But the final 14 months of my stint, that was in general population, not one problem. And those people there saw me as someone who was railroaded, someone who didn't belong there. They didn't see me as a police officer. They saw me as somebody who was being wrongfully prosecuted, who didn't belong in prison. And I had some really tough days, because I didn't have really a date to look forward to. The judge was going to make rulings on some post-trial motions, but he didn't say it was going to be on July 17th. It was like every day I woke up wondering if that was going to be the day I was going to hear something. And that was one of the toughest parts of being there. But
I got to say, it's got to be rough.
Really, it was rough, but those guys really, these are people who were real felons, people facing 15, 20 years in prison who actually committed crimes. And they were just like, really supported me and saw when I was having a rough day. For my daughter's birthday, they baked me a cake. Just really above and beyond kind of stuff that I'll never forget. And he juxtaposed that with the lack of any response whatsoever from the police department and people I, was pretty much in war, went to war with out there on the streets for almost 7 years.
Yeah.
Really telling.
Yeah. It shows people's true colors. So when did you find out that the case was overturned? And what was your reaction? You must have been stoked.
Yeah, well, June 30th, 2014, I was notified that the judge was going to make a decision later that day, but I didn't know what time. So it's kind of funny how it played out. And I'll make this as brief as I can.
Yeah.
But it was time to be locked in for the night, and I still hadn't heard anything. So the judge still hadn't ruled by 9:30 at night. We were still waiting. So I was in my cell. The judge ended up making a ruling at about 10:30 or 11 o'clock. So basically everybody knew, my family knew, my lawyers knew, but I was the last one to know. I didn't find out till the next morning. And obviously, I was euphoric. And this is going to sound strange, but, I mean, they got me out of there quickly. I mean, I was out the door in less than an hour.
And
I really wished that morning, yeah. And I really do wish that I had at least a half a day or maybe just one more day there, just so I could thank everybody who was helping me out. I was rushed out of there and I didn't get a chance to collect my mail. I didn't get a chance to say really goodbye to anybody. And I wish I had that chance because those people did really mean a lot to me while I was there.
Wow. So what did you do as soon as you got out?
Oh, geez. We went to my lawyer's office. We popped some champagne, celebrated. But I wasn't really out of the woods yet. I was free, but not really free. The government was going to appeal what the trial judge did. So for basically a year and a half, it was still sort of hanging over my head. There was a chance that the Court of Appeals could reinstate the guilty verdict and I would be back in prison. So we didn't think that was likely, but it was possible. When the Court of Appeals, there was an oral argument portion of the appeal process, and they seemed to make it pretty clear that they weren't going to put me back in prison. One of the three judges compared my conspiracy case to a conspiracy involving leprechauns selling cocaine from the moon and having eagles fly from the moon to the streets. And, so.
Look, those leprechauns have good blow,
Yeah.
I mean, don't knock it. All right, come on.
Yeah, so we felt pretty good that the Court of Appeals was going to affirm the trial judge's ruling.
Wow. I mean, ultimately, your defense attorneys proved that, fantasizing about committing a crime, even a crime of horrible violence against people is not an actual crime. And I think that's really important.
Exactly.
It's precedent setting.
Fantasies run the gamut. There's all kinds of weird stuff out there that people are into. There's one called dendrophilia that involves having sex with trees. Why couldn't I get that one instead of the whole paddle thing? And people don't choose it. They just sort of. It just sort of comes when you start becoming a little more sexually mature. You start realizing what arouses you, what doesn't, and it's just, if I could have picked, I would have picked something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, yeah, I get
My
that.
Little Ponies
It's like,
or something.
I'm thankful. I don't have something like that. It's a weird, thought-provoking case, because especially in the documentary. And it's the woman who directed. I think she also did the one about Michelle Carter that's out now, which is also, similarly thought-provoking. Because it's like, I don't know, in terms of, obviously, fantasies about, hurting people, but I don't know, if you don't do anything. In terms of Me Too, Aziz Ansari is more culpable, Yeah. So I don't know. It's weird.
It's definitely a gray area.
Again, that's the real important question of the case is when should law enforcement get involved? If I had bought ropes and chloroform and things like that, does that constitute being ready to act, or is it just something to make it more titillating for my fantasy? You know what I mean? So, my answer, I love sting operations. I think sting operations really get at a person's true intent. If you're going to meet somebody as part of some kind of ruse, right? Law enforcement setting up the whole thing. If you're willing to go out and meet somebody and discuss something in person, like a real plan in person with somebody, I think that's a big, big step in that person maybe wanting to act.
You never met up with any of the co-conspirators. There's a guy named Moody Blues and some other guys they mentioned.
No, that guy lived in England. Another guy was in Pakistan. I think the most ridiculous part of this whole case, and this is when really people started to get it, was, as part of these stories and chats, we would say, we're going to kidnap this girl on Tuesday, February 20th. So it came out after examining all of my chat transcripts that there was a date, February 20th, where I swear to God, they alleged that this was true, that I was going to kidnap one girl in Ohio kidnap another one in Manhattan and then bring another girl to Pakistan all on the same day. Like,
I can get around.
when that came out of court, the courtroom was packed every day with media, and once that piece of information came out, everyone pretty much knew that this was just a total nonsense prosecution. And they, the U.S. Attorney's Office, they tried to maintain that this was still a real conspiracy. At a certain point, you just have to. These are smart people. These are people who went to Harvard Law School. These are not idiots,
But I don't think it takes much to convince a jury. But in the end, like, no real world steps were taken, and I think that's what it comes down to. One quick suggestion here: in the future, I would definitely use an incognito browser when browsing for porn, just in the future.
Yeah, but
Yeah, well, I'm not doing role plays and things like that anymore. I still look at pornography from time to time. I mean, I'm in the privacy of my home. I can do what I want.
But I'm sure there are ways to realize that with a partner that are safe for the both of you, right? There must be.
Yeah, sure. And as I said, maybe 20 minutes ago, I've had opportunities to engage in that sort of stuff. It's funny, when I went into one of the sex stores around here, the first time I went to the place a couple years ago to buy some, bondage stuff, and the woman at the counter recognized me right away. She's like, "Oh my God, it's you!" And she was so happy and like welcoming. And I was a little nervous to go in there at first, but she was like, "No, like here's like stuff, if you want to like inflict a little pain, but she was like so cool with the whole thing." And
do you own the rights to the thing, to like the whole story, or?
Yeah, I have. Well, not really. My book was optioned for a movie, so I guess that means they have the rights now.
But you get a cut of that. People, I want to let the listeners know that you do have a book out. It's called Raw Deal: The Untold Story of NYPD's Cannibal Cop. There's also a documentary that we were talking about before called Thought Crimes. Do you have anything else that we could plug, Gil? What about your horror novels?
Yeah, I have. I mean, all that stuff is on my Amazon page. If you were going to look up my Raw Deal, the memoir, you'll see the other stuff there too. We don't have to spend a lot of time on that because that's really for a certain audience. I want everyone to read my memoir, but the extreme horror books are really for people who are into that kind of thing. And since you mentioned the documentary, I want to say that the documentary was a main reason for me writing the book, because the documentary was extremely, extremely inaccurate. I was told it was going to be done a certain way, and it ended up being something completely different. I was just extremely, extremely pissed off when, they screened it for me. It was not an accurate representation of the case. I was extremely furious about the entire thing. I was lied to. My family, my lawyers were all lied to by that woman. You mentioned, also Michelle Carter. Yeah, no, she's
What do you think about the Michelle Carter case?
I haven't looked into it too much. I'm not going to watch the documentary because I'm not going to watch anything done by that.
Sure.
By that deceiving con artist. I'm not interested in anything she does.
I felt honestly like after watching that documentary, I didn't think it flowed really well. It's like it's very repetitive, and she kept going over the same points. I mean, obviously I don't know about the accuracy like you do, but I just thought the documentary itself didn't flow very well.
Well, I thought it was garbage. We were all completely just really shocked because she seemed to say all the right things, and she seemed to be really in our corner. And she was going to make clear that this was a wrongful prosecution, how I didn't belong in prison, and it was just anything but. She just made it like 50-50, and she said herself, she did a lot of interviews after it aired, that, she wanted half the audience to think that I would have done something and half the audience to think that I wouldn't have done anything. And why would I agree to something like that? When the documentary came out, the case is still pending, so why would I agree to do something like that? To participate in something like that if she didn't tell us. And really up until the last day, she was maintaining that act that, she was completely on our corner and she was going to show how just what an injustice this was. So,
yeah, God.
But it did really push me to write the book because I needed my full story out there, and a documentary failed at that.
Well, Great. Yeah, I definitely want to check it out, and I recommend people go check it out. Raw Deal, The Untold Story of NYPD's Cannibal Cop. Gil, thanks for being on the show, man. It was good chatting with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yep, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, very, very interesting. All right. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, guys.